Hello, everybody. Welcome to Houdini Hangout. My name's Peter. I'm the host of the stream, and welcome to 2025. We're here. We're doing it. Things are underway for the year, so glad to have you here and joining us. And I was planning on streaming last week, but at this point, at that point, I was sick with some COVID, so was out of commission for a little bit, and it's just better to just rest and feel a little bit better. It was New Year's Day anyway, so I wasn't sure how many people would even be around or paying any attention to anything like that. But here we are. We're back. We're good. And I just wanted to say to anybody out there that might be out in Los Angeles with everything going on, hope you're all doing well. I know that's a crazy, crazy situation. Lots of fires and things like that. We have, at Side Effects, we have quite a few staff members out there as well. And just hearing reports and things like that from them seems pretty scary. So stay safe. Hopefully everybody is doing all right. And follow all those rules and stuff like that. I've never had a wildfire anywhere near me, but I have had crazy snowstorms, and the key to getting through that stuff is usually following all of the recommendations of people and things like that. So hopefully you're all doing well, and all my best to the folks out there. So for tonight, why don't we get into some Houdini stuff and talk about some things. So tonight, I think what we're going to do is just do a generic question and answer kind of event, I guess, or whatever, evening. We do this. I've done this quite a few times. Seems like the last time I did it was like August. So, I like to do it maybe every few months or whatever, just to kind of let whoever's here just bring up questions and topics and things like that. Might not be the most, sexy topic, basically, or like there's no flashy stuff that we're going to be talking about. But if you have questions or thoughts or anything like that, might be a good time to just bring them up and just kind of chat about them. So for, as with most of our streams and things like that, if you have a question or a comment or anything like that, feel free to put it in the chat. Happy to take a look at whatever's going on there. Seeing what, seeing some of the things that you guys are interested in or curious about. So we can kind of go from there and see what we can get into. Don't, feel free to put whatever you might be thinking of in there. Nothing is kind of off limits as far as Houdini goes. Nothing is too simple or too complicated of a question, I guess. I mean, maybe something might be too complicated to get into, but we'll try to at least have a conversation about it. Maybe not be able to, we might not be able to get super far into it, so we'll do our best to kind of have some conversations and talk about those things. So, looks like I already have a couple people throwing some questions in the chat, so that's great. I guess that's really about it. We're just going to kind of have a generic kind of chat about whatever, and we'll probably whip up some stuff in Houdini and talk about it a little bit. I'll do my best to answer questions and things like that. Maybe I won't know the best way of doing something or whatever, but I'll kind of give some ideas or maybe give you some suggestions on directions to go. Sometimes that's can be just as helpful as, a super detailed answer, because then you can kind of take the information and kind of mold it to what you might want to do with it. So anyways, so why don't we kind of get going, and then we can see what's going on here. So the first question from Lignazio is some tricks to do a good smooth meshing of a flip simulation. I always get flickery results. So there's a couple things that I can think of to kind of keep in mind for a flip simulation. And there's sort of things I want to say it's stuff that I had learned from Applied Houdini, I want to say, from doing some of his courses, but it might just be stuff that I've maybe kind of messed around with over time, and some things that I don't even remember where I learned them from or whatever, or where I these thoughts came from. But let's do this. Let's get into some Houdini here. So let me don't do this dramatic. There we go. All right. So let's do this. Let's throw on a geometry node here, and let's see what we can't do. So we'll call this flip meshing. Jump inside. So let me think if there is a quick way to do this. Maybe we'll just do. No, let's do something like. I feel like the configure lavas has got a decent amount of little details in it. So let's see if we can't get something interesting going there. And yeah, so we can do this. This should work. Hey, Zach, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Should probably get that. All right, so let's just roll this a few frames here. We're not seeing anything because we're looking at the fluid compress. So let's just kind of jump out here and let this roll a little bit. This is obviously the SOP workflow for fluids. The first thing I'll say for fluids in general is that you're usually going to get a much better result if your fluid is just higher resolution, right? So that's always kind of a consideration. This is a pretty low resolution fluid right now that we're looking at. And so if we go down here, this will actually mesh it, right? And this is going to have, yeah, if we use this, we can see the attribute adjust color. Actually, that was kind of what I wanted to see. So this is a lava simulation, right? And it's cooling down and it's doing its thing, right? So there are some things that I think you can do to make your fluid work maybe a little bit better. One thing would be in the receding, you might want to oversample a little bit more at the boundaries. That might give you a little bit more detail as your sim is going along. And just a reminder, what receding is going to do is if there's a voxel in your fluid that is either underrepresented with particles or overrepresented with particles, like there's too many packed into there for what is reasonable for the current simulation. There's these birth and death thresholds here. So this is so these are basically thresholds, and they kind of control how much is going to birth new particles and how many are going to kill off particles depending on if they're too tightly packed in. So that receding thing is going to have a pretty good, it's going to really have a big impact on your simulation overall, especially if you're doing like slow motion stuff and things like that. So a lot of, or like viscous stuff, a lot of times when you get into really high viscosity stuff, it's recommended to turn off receding, if I'm remembering that correctly. But in general, like slow motion stuff, I feel like everybody always wants to do slow motion fluid. So that can be, you might want to turn the receding off because you don't want particles popping in and out, things like that. If you're slowing it down, stuff like that. There's things in of that nature that could be something to keep in mind, right? The other thing obviously is in the particle fluid surface. And there's a couple of things here that can really change the look of things, right? So a couple things that I will mess with are the voxel scale. So sometimes you might want to bring this down a little bit. So the voxel scale is going to change the resolution at which the surface is actually getting. Hey, Johannes, welcome. So this is going to change the the kind of detail of this overall mesh that's being created. I'll turn off the adaptivity here, and you'll see that this is, this is the voxel grid of the VDB, I believe, in the background that this is being transferred into. So therefore, that will affect how we're remeshing that. If we bring this back up to 0.75, you should see that those kind of, should probably hit enter. You'll see that those push apart, right? So that's one thing that's going to help, is that if you have a little bit more of a fine voxel scale here, that can be helpful to kind of retain some details, make sure that you're not having things popping in and out because they're maybe being represented in that voxel on one frame and then not on the other. So that can be helpful. Another thing is kind of playing around with this influence scale here as well. I've sometimes brought this down a little bit and found that that can give you a better result. So maybe just bringing it down a little bit might help. Might kind of, it's going to adjust the influence that each of those particles have to the overall mesh, right? So so you might, whether it's there or not will then be affected, this, will have an impact on it. And so that can tend to help give a little bit better results sometimes too. I'll just reset that back. And then another thing that I've found is that if you take this limit refine iterations, that can help a little bit as well, with some of the like flickering and noise issues. That can be something that could be, could help to basically, the way I understand that is it stops it from doing too many levels of refinement. And it basically is, it will basically keep this kind of algorithm from repeating itself a certain number of times, and that could possibly, like if you have enough resolution in your fluid, that could possibly help to kind of control how the how the mesh is being generated and stuff like that. So I think a lot of this is going to have to do with having enough particles in the first place. Like that's a big part of fluid simulations, right? Is having enough particles to kind of get the results that you're looking for. And this really is not a lot of particles. And I couldn't do a big particle simulation in a reasonable amount of time here for, this chat, just to be able to do. But if I was going to do that, sorry, flip tank here. Honestly, probably bringing the point separation way down to like 0.03 is going to help me get a much better result here. Now I am getting some crazy like explosive forces with the fluid kind of flying out like that. It's interesting. And this is obviously going to change the cooling properties and things like that of specifically of the like lava simulation here. So maybe we'll just not go quite so crazy there. Just hopefully that won't go so nuts. Yeah. But like, it's really kind of a factor of what's your initial fluid like. I mean, a lot of times people are like, oh, this has got to be good enough, right? Like this is a good enough resolution to kind of see how things are netting out. But, here we really only have 200,000 points right now in this simulation. You can see down here, 300, something like that. So it's really still not that many particles. Flip really it isn't super fast, so you should know that. Like it's not the fastest like algorithm. And I think we've got all these things stuck here in midair because they're all now cooled down, like they've cooled down or whatever. And so I think they're on the plane, aren't they? Yeah, they're on the plane. Just looked like they were hanging in midair for a second there. Anyways, so it's kind of a combination of those things, right? Like those are things that are all kind of work together in your circumstance to make things better. Where it's like, if you have really flat sheets, there's going to be different parameters that you're going to need to set to make sure that those like sheets of water have better cohesion across frames versus, if you've got a big, splash or something like that, that's like more like this, where it's kind of just bursting or something. So there's a lot of considerations to have there. And I don't really have like some great, like, hey, here's the magic bullet to solve this. But I think having some of those kind of in the back of your mind to kind of work with and play around with certainly would be really good things to keep in mind. I also can never say enough good things about the Applied Houdini series. I mean, gosh, they're just so good. Like, so good. I mean, I know it's a paid series, but gosh, that's I feel like where I learned a ton of my stuff from, and it's just, yeah, his stuff is fantastic. So hopefully that's sort of helpful. I know it's probably not a complete top to bottom solution, but I think maybe those suggestions will point you more in the right direction. And just as a reminder too, this particle fluid surface has more inputs on the top, but you can still just use it. Yeah, of course, Lignazio, of course. And you can just use it without these two here. This is just the way that the SOP fluid system works, but yeah, you can do it without that. So cool. Yeah, so just as a reminder, we're doing a Q&A. So if you have questions or comments or anything like that you're curious about, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll kind of work through them as we go. I also had one on the Discord server that somebody just put in there today, which I might get to depending on how many questions we've got, or if we have any. Hey, Grant, Happy New Year! Cheers, welcome. So yeah, so cool. Let's go to this question Ruben had. And that's a question of, how can I melt an object using flip or vellum? I only want certain parts to melt while other parts stay rigid or unaffected. Yeah, so there's probably several ways that you could go about doing something like that. A lot of times, the way that so honestly, something with vellum would probably be. Oh, cool! Thanks, Esteban. Welcome. You're welcome. My Apex videos. I don't know what my Apex videos are. I don't remember doing any Apex videos, but great. I'm glad they helped. Anyways, yeah. So probably the easiest way to deal with a melting object like that would probably, as long as it's on a relatively small scale, would be with vellum. So let's take a look at that actually. So let's do vellum fluid melting. So the reason I say that it's easier to deal with vellum is to think about just from a base standpoint, what the difference is between those two solvers. Vellum is a completely point-based solver, right? There is no volume that you're controlling in order to do anything there. So your control tends to be a little bit stronger in that case, because if the attribute is written to those points and those points keep those attributes, you don't have to deal with any reseeding or anything like that. It just kind of stays as is. That is a much simpler process to kind of tackle. Flip does have the particle side, but it also has the volume side. So you have to kind of keep both of those things in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that it's maybe inherently more complicated to do it. You could probably use some of the same techniques, but I think illustrating it certainly in vellum is a much more straightforward thing to do. So yeah, let's do that. Let's just grab let's grab our toy. And let's zoom in on them here. And let's do vellum configure fluid. Should be able to just wire that in, get a fluid out of this here, because this is going to be a grain node, but it's going to be setting us up with a fluid. Now, sometimes you'll run into this where where things are slowing down. That's because we're compiling a kernel, an OpenCL kernel, that's going to help speed this process up in the future, but you have to first compile that. So that's what we are doing here, and it's just taking a second. You probably can't read that because I've got my little bar hidden down at the bottom underneath me here. So sorry, you can't exactly see that right at the moment. So just give it a second and we will, there we go. All right, so we've got some fluid here. Let's just reduce this a little bit. And, oh, that's too much. 4. Let's do 3. I want to have a little relation there, or a little resolution, but not too much. All right, so let's, I'm going to use a transform node just to make sure that it's obvious what we're doing here, because we could do it within the node itself, but we'll just give it a little transformation, maybe up 0.5 so that we can have some dropping going on here. So here's our vellum fluid, and we have our physical attributes here. Maybe we'll turn the viscosity up a little bit. We'll do like 10. Maybe we'll give it a little surface tension as well. Cool. And then if we do our vellum solver, in fact, we could do the vellum solver minimal for this, I bet, because it's just a fluid. We won't have any other interaction. So I'm going to do the minimal one. Now, just as a reminder, the minimal solver has some limitations as far as what it can do. It can only do grains or fluids. And yep, I'm like, where'd it go? There we go. Ground position. This should work. It should start to play back. We're just compiling the kernel there. And there we go. We've got our stuff melting and falling. Although I don't think we have any friction here. So maybe we turn that up a little bit and we see if we can get any better here with that. Let's go up a little bit with this and the viscosity. And will that give us a little more? I can never remember how exactly this works. Or at least at the moment I can't. Static threshold for friction. Oh, right. We have to turn these down for higher friction, I think. Duh. Maybe. Anyways, all right. We've got something working here, so that's great. So here's our little fluid simulation. It's nothing too exciting, but something's happening, so we'll work with it. And so what I would say that we want to do is we want to use an attribute to control this, right? So that will be kind of our first part of this, right? Is we want to have some sort of a, sorry, just had a hair go in my face. We want to use an attribute to control this. And so what we're going to do is, oh, hello, shooting blind. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt the I'm not really going to be melting the geometry of it. Like, to do that, probably what you would want to start out with is it would be basically like working with a bunch of SDFs, basically, to have the solid mesh being like, you'd have, like, basically what you do is you'd resurface this, right? You'd make a surface out of these particles and then go from there. Now you could also use some sort of a like a Boolean operation using some sign distance fields and things like that to be able to melt your object. That would work as well. But yeah, let's first take a look at the actual simulation part, and then we can look at maybe some considerations to take for this. So what I'm going to do is let's open up the help document, because we can look at some attributes here. And this is, I'm just going to go back to the main help, and we're going to go down to Vellum, and we should be able to find a bunch of stuff here. And if we look down now under advanced, I actually don't think this is that advanced, but Vellum attributes is what we want to look for here, because this is going to show us all the stuff that we can use in our in our solve, you know, in our simulation. And so what we want to do is we want to look at stopped. And so our stopped condition is actually going to be what we want to use to control this. And so you can actually see right here, this is, I mean, I know some of this stuff can be buried in deep in different cards and menus and things like that, but I think this stuff is great. Like, this is a standard pop attribute, but it's used and respected by Vellum. Auto sleep and awaken will manipulate the stopped attribute. So that is, there's actually a node that will allow you to deal with that, right? And so, so what we're looking at there is, if we set our stopped attribute to any one of these, that's going to be what it's going to do at the very beginning. So if we did something as simple as adding, let's do an attribute create, and let's just add one in here because we're just going to make a basic attribute. So let's call this stopped, right? And then this is going to be a point attribute. It's going to be an integer. And let's change the value to be 3. Because if we looked on this help card, 3, the particle can't rotate or move. So that's what we want. So we want it to be stopped. Size will be 1, so it's just an integer attribute. Let's just make sure that's right. So we have our, make sure we're selected on this. We have our stopped attribute at 3. If we turn this off, we'll see that that goes away. So if we do this now, just updating our kernel apparently. Now we have nothing happening, which is actually what we want to, this is exactly what we want. We want this to be static now. Even though this is something that's ready to simulate, it is in a stopped state. And what we can do is we can go in here and we can visualize this, right? So we can say, I feel like there's a way to visualize this. Maybe not in here, actually. Sorry. Oh, right. So there's sleeping is the same thing. That's the same idea as this. So, am I missing it here? I guess I must be. I thought there was a way that it would show the, yeah, I thought there was a way that it would show that, like display them as, it might be in the pop thing or something like that. But anyways, so we have these all stopped. So this is exactly what we want. Now, there's a couple ways you could go about doing this. You could do like a custom solver in here or whatever. But what we could do is we could do pop awaken. And I've used this a few times for a few different things, but this can be really helpful. So what we can do is we can do a pop awaken. And if we look here, we have 2 different ways of awakening. We can awaken by nearby particles that are moving. That's not what we want, because we want to have it maybe with a very specific, part of it that's going to wake this up. So what we can do then is we can say awaken by a volume. Now we don't have a volume yet, so let's do something to create that, right? Because we want to have a volume source, maybe from SOPs. Let's just say that. So so let's do this. Let's take a tube, polygon tube, and we will put end caps on it. And let's just visualize this. We'll make it quite a bit narrower in radius. And I'm going to put a transform on this so that we have a nice way to move this around. So just do this, and the tube, let's make this maybe even a little narrower and maybe a little higher. We'll do 2. And let's just sort of, I'll actually turn that off. Let's just move this around maybe a little bit here. So we'll just do, oh, I rotated that by accident. So let's just rotate this. I was like, why is that handle not matching up to this? Okay, so let's just do this. We will just, we'll keyframe these. I clicked the wrong button there. So let's do that. And then we'll go up to like 24 and we'll move this down and maybe rotate it a little bit. And we'll have it go like this. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me move the pivot transform on this. So let's move this. in the Y, like so. Yep, let's do that. And then we'll take the translate back like this. And that way we can kind of do some like swipey type stuff here. So let's do this even a little bit better. So we'll take this guy, move it down like this here, and we'll just keyframe those. It changed. Then we'll come down here, and what are we going to be changing here? That's the rotate. And so let's just do one of these guys and one of these. Something like that. And we'll just kind of see what happens there. And that. And then we'll maybe just move it back across like that. Yeah, cool. All right, that'll work. It's something. And then let's do a VDB from, VDB from polygons. And let's throw this in here. So yeah, and just as a reminder to anybody that might be joining a little later, we're just doing kind of a Q&A here. So if you have any questions or thoughts or anything like that, while I'm kind of wrapping the, kind of doing some stuff here, throw them in the chat and we can get to them as we can, as kind of time goes along. So feel free to drop your ideas or thoughts there and we'll try to get to it as we go. Also, if you want a link to our Discord, you can go to Houdini Hangout and find the Discord there. Okay, so let me just double check what this, what kind of volume source we want here. So, I want to say that this is going to be, yes. So this is basically saying when volume is less than a certain value, that's when we want to awaken it, right? So if it's less than 0, that means that if we're looking at a sign distance field, when your volume goes inside of an object, that's negative. So that's less than 0. So we're inside the object with an SDF. That's when we want it to work. You could do it with a fog volume as well, but I'm going to do it with a surface like an SDF. So let's do this. We'll do something like 0.4 maybe. 0.03. That's good. All right. And then we'll say null here. And we'll just say melt object. And then when we come in here, we can give this SOP path to where that is. There's our melt object. We're going to select that. Now that will be looked at here. And we could obviously refine this to a certain group or activate it on a certain frame, things like that. But we should be good with this. So this is going to actually awaken our object, right? So this is going to take it, change that stopped attribute from 3 to 0. And that's going to start activating these. So let's see what happens here and see how this works. Oh, actually, you know what? Is there a visualization in this? No, there's not. Okay. I was thinking maybe there was one in there actually. So let me just visualize this so we can see. Actually, I'm going to visualize up here so we can see the actual, kind of geometric object. So hopefully when we cut through them here, we'll see that this is going to start to melt down. And it certainly is. And he's starting to kind of ooze out and do its thing. Now, the good thing is that this is going to still have a, it's still going to have a collider with those other objects. They're still stopped. But this is going to give it the ability to then free itself up, right? So let's just take a look at that here. Let's just minimize this and just kind of see what's going on here. And so there you go. You've got some stuff that's melting off, doing its thing there. And so, yeah, so we've got melted object that we're controlling. Now, Something you might notice here is that we have some stuttered kind of frames here on the back. We just have little pieces that are coming out. So that's because this is moving fast enough that we're not getting that on each frame. So what we would need to do there is probably give ourselves a couple of maybe global substeps just to kind of make it a little bit, give ourselves a little more temporal resolution to be able to kind of look at that, whether those particles are inside of that object or not per frame. So this should give us a little bit more of a continuous line versus that kind of stepped situation. And yeah, it definitely, I'm seeing that more of them are now being separated there. Maybe it's not going to be as full as it could be. And what we could do is actually visualize that after the fact, right? Because these are going to have that stopped attribute. So let's do this. Let's bring this up and we'll turn on stopped. This is going to take it away from visualizing as spheres, but that's okay. We can kind of see this as is and kind of take a look at what's going on. So this should visualize for us when we get, right now stopped is on 3. We should get different colors when those go through. Yep. And they're turning to kind of a purplish color here. Maybe I will see if I can change the background to a dark gray. That might make this a little easier to see. Yep. And then there you go. Now you can see those, you can see that those have, their particles are being affected there and they're actually, melting and stuff like that. We could also do I think color would allow us to do this maybe more visually with the spheres. If we did maybe random from attribute and the attribute could be stopped. No, maybe not. I was thinking that would work. No, for some reason. Okay, never mind. I thought that might show up, but maybe when we're looking at it as spheres, the coloring does not work that way. Anyways, so that would be a way that I would kind of do that. And this doesn't have to be, this isn't the only way that you'd be able to go about doing this, right? What you can do within, Flip is going to be a little bit more, there's going to be a little bit more control there, but also you're going to need to do probably a lot more to control that stuff. Like you might have to set like sort of like what the lava was doing, right? So let's go back to this flip meshing, right? And take a look at what's going on there. I'm just going to hit stop there, go back, play this for a couple frames. Sure. Yeah. No errors, please. Thank you. What we can look at here is that we have attributes that are going to be here as well. And we can look at those, like our viscosity is going to be something. So if we look at this and kind of visualize our viscosity, we can see that there's an incredibly high viscosity that's being set. And what it actually does, I think, is over time, it will, like for some of these really, really dark sections, it will set those. I think that must be the part that's the 100,000. So it ramps up to this really, really viscous level. I actually want to say that there might be, sorry, I just wanted to see here. I'm just looking to see if they're actually getting rid of any attributes. Yeah, no, it doesn't look like they're getting rid of any attributes. So there might be a similar attribute for like that with flip. I can't remember if there is or not. As far as um, like a stopped attribute, but something along that line would certainly get you kind of a similar look, right? You just do it in reverse, right? So you would do it where you're going to start with an object that's fully, uh, fully stopped, and then slowly reduce the viscosity on those parts. So there's a little bit more control there that would have to do and things like that. Um, cool. So hopefully that helps. And then what I would probably say with meshing this would be like, let's say you started um, with your geometry or whatever here, like this geometry. Maybe you would turn this into an SDF, and then you would do sort of like a type of you do like a Boolean operation to it, maybe within a solver node might be a good way to do that. And then every frame you would Boolean from that, and subtract from that SDF. And then that would allow you to kind of eat away at that surface that you've created. And then that part you would eat away from this main surface. And then you would, in those frames, you would replace that with the fluid simulation and replace it with that surface there as it's like melting out. So it's kind of that switching type of an idea. You could also just do it all as one, right? Like you could just do the whole thing resurfaced from these particles, just like you would with a fluid surface. And then as that attribute changes, you could do something to shade that section differently, right? As it's melting. That's a possibility as well. So there's a few different options there to kind of look at. But I think, yeah, that's probably your, yeah. Okay, Zach. Yeah. You're saying, I think stopped work. Yeah, I think it does too. Stopped works with flip. But I don't remember 100%. And it's just more to control. So the concept would be very similar. It just would be with flip instead of with that. And probably would be easier to do that with, well, yeah, it would probably be a little easier to control that with the, without going into this. Maybe not. Yeah, here. Oh, sorry. That's right. This has the gas temperature update inside of it. So what you could do here is, you could actually use this gas temperature update, just like you see in here, and use that to map, here it says map temperature to viscosity. And that would be a way to be able to kind of control that. And then you can see here there's a solidify threshold and a maximum viscosity and things like that. So yeah, so that would be helpful. Now, is it solid? Probably not completely solid. So that could be something to keep in mind. Like I feel like flip is hard to keep like super, super solid. So it might be something to consider there, but especially if you're using it just as like a one-off thing. Like if it's not like this, I don't know. I feel like if you're controlling it in the right way, you could make it work for you just fine. But yeah, anyways. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Who asked that? I think that was Ruben asked that. So hopefully that helps, Ruben, and gives you some ideas to work with there and play around with. You can kind of try a bunch of different things. So yeah, lots of different ideas and options there. All right. So the next question I saw was with Zach, and he posted this in the suggestions. Yep, I did see that. Is there a best practice advice for file caching with substeps? Especially for a vellum sim where point counts change. I'd be curious to hear what specific things that you're running into that's a problem with the file caching in that instance. I know you have substeps, so I'm guessing that you're wanting to slow them down maybe, and that's causing some issues. I'm not 100% sure what what I could say for best practices with that would be. let me see here. Let me do this. Let me make a geometry node here. Well, you're probably going to type something up there. Let me just see vellum emit and cache. Let's just do this. Let's do this. Let's grab our pig. He'll be good for some sort of soft body thing. Let's do a transform here. Oh, okay. Clients love the oh yeah. Tell me about it. Holy cow. I feel like that was every creative brief I was ever in. Like when I was at my studio, like the last studio I was at, it was like, oh yeah, this is really, can you do like fluid and this type of thing? I'm like, yeah, sure. Can you do it this? And then, oh, can we just slow everything down to like insane 20x bullet time? And you're like, oh, God, like, can we not for once, please? Anyways. All right, so let's just, nope, that's the wrong number, 2.5. Okay, so let's do a vellum, let's do a tetrahedral soft body here. No, you know what, actually, this could cause some issues. Let's do, I mean, there's ways of doing this, but let's just do the simpler one. Let's do configure balloon, and that should be a little easier to do. Okay, great. And then we can, let's see here. Then we'll do a vellum solver like so. We will wire that in. Oops. Here we go. This is sort of the weird little workaround that doesn't always seem to make sense because you're like, well, these are red. It should seem like that's required, but it will work still. Okay, so this is our geo. These are our constraints. We're going to use those to emit into this vellum solver here. So that's going to go into source. We're going to do vellum source. It's going to go into here. We're going to say, we'll say each frame. And we'll just say $F modulo, I don't know, maybe 10. So every 10 frames we'll have it emit. All right, so our stop path is going to be our geo. And then our constraint path is going to be con. And there's our vellum. And if we do, let's do this. Let's do some point velocity here just to kind of push it off to the side. Give it a little nudge. We'll just keep incoming, add velocity, turn this on so we can see it. And what are we in X here? Let's do -5 maybe. And we'll just have it shoot off to the side each frame. So cool. Let's see what happens here. So we should have that, and it should. Oh. What? Oh, right. It's got to be double equals, or else it doesn't. It's not a thing that's. It's not doing a comparison. It's just reading. It's reading out basically. So if we do this and look at it, we'll see that it goes back to 0. So 1, 0. Okay, cool. So that's turning on and off. So let's come back up here, hit play. There we go. We're shooting pigs into space. Well, that's an old joke. Holy cow. Blunk, blunk. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually change that to like 12. Just give it a couple extra frames to get out of the way, just so we're not causing any overly crazy like intersections or anything like that. So we'll just shoot those off to the side, let them fall down. Zach, I'm glad you got that one. Shooting pigs in space. Go watch the Muppet The Muppet Show, kids. It's a good one. It's a classic. Anyways, so we've got some of these coming like that, and that's all well and good. So if you're going to do a Vellum IO, does that have the same stuff? Yes, it does. So, what I would do is I would go to this. Hey, yeah, thanks. Glad you enjoy the pig pile. So we've got our pigs kind of doing their thing here, and if we wanted to do, some global substeps here. Let's see here. Oh, interesting. Huh. I'm not sure why it did that. Why did it do 2? Oh, I bet you I know why. Sorry. I think it needs to be, if I do FF, I think that might stop it from doing that, because I think it's just doing an integer frame value. Nope, because that's never going to hit that exactly, is it? SF, maybe? Oh, right, it's not going to play while I'm in here. Right, because every... Okay. Let me think about this. Each substep. Okay. So now we need to change this to 24 because it's doing it every substep. So simulation frame. Yeah, that's great. All right, so let's not do a crazy long thing here. We'll just do 72 frames of this and just get this to write out or whatever. Cool. All right, there's our amazing Vellum simulation. So let's do this. We'll do this with 2 substeps, right? And we'll call this slow-mo Vellum cache. Yeah, change this because I don't like when it's got the full file name in there for whatever reason. Okay. So let's just see what happens here, because I haven't done this ever, I don't think, with this specific cache node. So let's just do that. Cool. Okay. What earth is going on here? Okay. So that's playing back just fine. Let's take a look at what we have here. And let's take a look at what those files are. So let's do this. Let me open up my D drive here and take a look at Houdini Hangout or 2025. Crazy. Oh, I didn't make a folder for the date. I'll have to put that in there. So here's how it wrote those files out to disk. And I think this is different than how it would have written it out. What? Cache sequence is still on 1. Yes. That's weird. Huh. Sorry. I don't do this very often. Wait, but it saved him out for me. So why is that? It saved him out. Let me go to fractional frames here. Yeah, it's playing him back fractionally. Yeah, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Yeah. So we're getting it. The playback is working. So yeah, so that's all working. Now, I'm wondering, Zach, your question about that was maybe you were running into a problem where you were when you were retiming it. So let's look at that here and let's see. Let's do that. So we're just going to use this retime node and let's see if we can just give it a little less speed here and see what happens. I mean, everything seems to be okay here. I don't see anything crazy happening. Let's go to like 0.25 just so we can actually get through the whole. Or actually, no, we can just change this to 240 and then we can play back like that. It seems to be working all right. Well, I don't know if this maybe was how you did it or not, Zach. Yeah, like with Vellum and things like that, it should be no problem to be able to yeah, it's probably that, Zach. Honestly, yes, because yeah, if you're doing a float frame, it's going to be looking at some weird stuff. It could yeah, it's going to be doing some different things. What this Vellum IO node is doing is it's actually building the file name on its own, right? So it's doing a whole bunch of like stuff on itself. Yeah, exactly. The ID count thing. Yes, exactly. I was kind of thinking that might have been your problem as well. But it doesn't even look like we're running into that. And in fact, I don't even have an ID on this. That I can see. Did it delete that attribute? What's going on here? No, I should have an ID, right? No, it doesn't even look like I have an ID. That's really weird. Thought it would. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we're not even really running into that issue at all. So yeah, maybe that's some of the problem you were running into was this using something more like a traditional file cache, just using that, right? Like, because the Vellum IO is basically just a fancy file cache, but using this, turning the substeps on, letting it kind of do it that way, and that will maybe just control it a little bit. But yeah, it didn't. Yeah, the retime didn't get confused by anything. So it maybe just was an order of how you were doing it. There's so many different ways you can do everything in here. So I mean, yeah, it could have just been something as simple as that. So yeah, maybe try this Vellum IO, and that might give you a much better, workflow. And if you look at the way that the files are being named here, it's I think if you were to do, for example. Well, now it's a little hard to even kind of do this in some ways, but like, if you're saving it out, what is it? ROP geometry output. Let me just do that. Let me just do something that's like super basic and straightforward. So let's do this. and we'll say geo, and we'll just say OS, and we'll just say, we'll call this like, I don't know, maybe explicit method or something like that. We do like FF, something like that. And is it, do we do it like that? 0.5 every half? That's the increment? Gosh, I'm sorry. I haven't done this in a long time. Let me just try this. Oops, sorry. That's not what I meant to do. Yes, that seems to be writing it out the way I was kind of thinking. So I'm just going to interrupt that. And let's see what happens if we just do a file node and we just copy this parameter, paste relative references there. Yeah, see, this is doing all sorts of crazy stuff because this is trying to bring in. Yes, because, okay, so the reason that that's not working is because you're doing like the float frame is doing things a little differently. So like, yeah, here it's gonna so it's gonna be like probably cool for a little bit, and then, well, no, that's weird. Don't know why that's working. But yes. So I don't know why that's working, but yes, this makes sense because it's trying, you have to remember that what you're asking, kind of think about, we're asking something really specific of Houdini here. And I'm going to make this a little wider. If we look at this here, we're looking at frame 12.2, which just isn't going to exist, right? Because that's what frame we're on. So if we have these, incremental, like this will play back fine, right? It's such a funny thing. If we turn this on and go to 20.4, there's not going to be a frame there because it's giving us exactly what we're asking for, right? It's giving us that exact fractional frame that we're asking for. So that's why we're seeing it that way. We might be able to say 2 substeps, and then this should play back just fine because now we're only going to be looking for every other substep. So you could just do that float frame, fractional frame, whatever that stands for, and that'll play back okay. But if we do this and set it to 10, it's going to cause problems. So yeah, so that looks like that was what you were running into there. And honestly, I think just in general, letting these things do what they what you might expect them to do, or, they're kind of built to do this sort of a thing. So kind of best to let them have their ways or whatever, and kind of name things and control things. I feel like it just works out so much better in the long run. Yeah, that whole file cache thing is so much better than the old, like, just standard way of having to save things out and think about like, oh, is this going to write over my files or whatever? Like, as long as you've got everything checked in there, it's going to do a pretty nice job. Cool. So that, yeah, that makes sense. That's like a little maybe a little gotcha there. Let me just go back and look here, and let me grab a drink while I'm reading. Been a while since I've talked for this long, so it's yeah, Zach, I've been there before, have a few missteps and everything just goes sideways. I've had that happen. Okay. All right, it looks like there's a question from Johannes. So I am going to just go back over here because this is more of just a straight question, so we don't need to just look at the Houdini interface the whole time. And he was asking, do I think there will ever be an auto, will there ever be an auto rigger for Apex? Well, That's a good question. Will there ever be an auto rigger for Apex? I think really the question there is, will there be an auto rigger for Kinefx? Because in a lot of ways, the Kinefx workflow is really just being put into Apex. So that's something to kind of think about there. But do I think that I think there probably will be eventually. I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in that space, right? Like there's a lot of things happening, and obviously, like there's been constant development over the past few releases that have made some significant changes. And kind of if you look at the Apex nodes themselves, you can kind of tell that the parameter interface isn't really like final. It's still very in process. It's something a bit malleable. And what I would say is that I think for maybe certain cases, like there might be ways to more easily automate the rigging of a character, right? But I think if you look at some of the stuff that's been done with tagging and with what are they called? I'm trying to think of the name. There's a name for it. The auto rig component. I think it's not auto rig. What is it? What are they called? Is that what they're called? They're called something that's like a component or something. But like basically what you can do is you can tag your stuff coming in, right? And then anything that comes into a certain you can kind of set up a whole group of logic that flows through, and then any model that goes into that logic can see those tags and be given 1, 3, 4, 8, whatever, IK chains or, curved like spline, constraints and things like that. So there are a lot of ways, there's a lot of ways that those can be used. And there's actually some really cool stuff on the content library, I think, where there's stuff from demo files that were released, I think in the 20.5 release, showing like, the same network just being able to switch between rigging an elephant and a bird and a human and a, whatever else. Like there's a few different things that get put in there and it just handles it no problem. And I think there might, like, I could see that workflow getting pushed even further, because it's kind of the idea of Houdini, right? Is parameterizing a problem like that, right? Where you've got like a few simple inputs from the user you can then just put it through a whole system and it'll just set up your rig logic for you, right? I think if you're talking about like an auto rig from the standpoint of like here's a character and make a skeleton that goes inside of it and then rig that and bind that to the mesh and all that kind of stuff, like maybe that's something that'll happen too. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm that's not my area of expertise by a long shot, but I think there is a lot of there's a lot of stuff there that can that could be automated. I just don't know if that specific one step is the thing that's like right now I think we're trying to get as much parity with stuff like Maya, Blender, whatever that people use for animation. I'm not an animator, so I don't even know what like the things that people need to be able to animate in is. But yeah, so that would be my 2 cents on that. I don't really know if I have any like real thoughtful insight. I could just see those workflows kind of continuing in that process. And I think you'll see some of those. Are they called auto rig? Now I just need to look here. Sorry. What are they called? Yeah, auto rig components. So those I think are going to be the thing that really, you know, pushes these things um a lot further. I think those will be the things. I mean, it's not an if you're thinking of it, like I said, if you're thinking of an auto rigger in in the sense of like just give me a fully built rig that works with my random character that I've input. I mean, you can sort of get that from, I mean, like it's sort of a solved problem, I guess, right? Like Mixamo does that and different things like that. Like creating a skeleton from a mesh is kind of like there's ways to calculate those things. Whether or not there'll be one that ships in Houdini anytime soon, I think there's other things that might be a higher priority than that one specific thing. And I think those components are a really strong way of doing that. Also, like there's all these things like Animbot and these different like plugins that exist for Maya that every animator uses that, you know, Side Effects has to think about like how do we how do we compete with those as well? Like it's not just Maya that we have to compete with. There's a whole ecosystem around Maya. In fact, Maya is just kind of the base that all this other stuff has been built on top of, that animators actually use. It's not so much the Maya tools. It's really all these things on top of that were built. So, anyways, yeah, my 2 cents. But anyways, um, cool. Let me just go back here and just see. Blah, blah, blah. Still don't know about that Apex video. What Apex video that is? Maybe there was one I did on here a while ago. I can't remember. Did I rig that? I don't remember. I my brain right now. I'm trying to learn stuff about path tracing to do a course on that, and just my brain's a little mushy. So, cool. Okay. Permanith asked, he's working with a university dev team. Is there a good workflow for generating procedural assets driven by C++ in Unreal Engine? Would those parameter endpoints be built into the HDA? Okay. So first of all, I'm pretty sure that's Michael. I think I know you from having some conversations online. So hello. I cannot always remember everybody's usernames, but I'm pretty sure that's who you are. So hi. Welcome to the stream. And the other thing, the thing I would say is generating procedural assets driven by C++ in Unreal Engine. Cool. It is. Yeah, so I don't know a ton about that kind of stuff. I'm guessing what you're saying is that there's something in Unreal Engine that you want to bring out of it into and use it with Houdini to then make an asset. I think that's what I'm understanding by that. And I actually think there's other ways of doing that. I don't do a lot of Unreal kind of stuff in general, but I also don't do it usually on the stream because it involves another software that I'm running while I'm streaming and doing a million other things. So I don't usually do that, and I'm not going to like load it up right now, but I'm pretty sure what you can do with I see. So like adaptive level generation. Yeah. Yeah. So adapting to stuff happening in Unreal, I think is what you're saying. And then bringing that into Houdini. So yeah, there is some, if you look back to the, some of the early Tops demos, actually do show, sorry, let me bring this up here real quick, and I'll try to keep track of what I'm looking at here. So, sorry, do we have game dev in here? Please, just looking at our stuff here. Yeah. So um, what I think you might find interesting is like if you're talking about world building, procedural um, using like Houdini to like update certain things. There are some really cool things that you can do even with tops. And I'm pretty sure that at this point, what's my favorite color? Um, I'm pretty sure that there are some things that will talk back and forth using PCG and um and Houdini. I'm pretty sure you can have a connection there. So if you have like your PCG stuff happening in Unreal, I'm pretty sure you can port that data over into Houdini and vice versa. And so that is something that you certainly could do. Now, one thing I will say is that Houdini engine doesn't work at runtime, right? So that is an important thing to note, that you can't, if there's anything that you want to have happen in a game, that like while a user is experiencing something, while the game is running, that won't work. Because that is a limitation of Houdini engine. It's running Houdini, so you need a license, blah blah blah. There's all sorts of reasons. But if you're doing that while you're building stuff, you can have Houdini talk back and forth using some of those things. I don't know. I don't know what the yes. So this might be, it's like using it's kind of like using, like if you're talking about world building and stuff like that. Let me bring this back over here. If you look under the PDG section here in the tutorials, I'm pretty sure it's this stuff here, where you can go through and have PDG kind of, like this, for example, like paths and roads. Like, let me see if I can bring this up, because it's pretty cool. Like, I'm gonna mute this as quickly as I can, so hopefully this isn't loud. But I'm pretty sure what you can do here is you can come in and you can basically have individual partitions on your, now this is Unity, but you can have individual partitions on your world that's being built and have them update. There were some demos of this, I believe, in the in one of the releases a while ago. But so yeah, that might be helpful to take a look at if you're looking at like world building stuff and just seeing how PDG might help with that, because that can help you build things a bit quicker, or like a bit more flexible when you're doing that. Just trying to see if there's any other stuff there with that. I can't remember. Again, unfortunately, game dev isn't my 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 specialty. I never done any game development stuff, and my only introduction to it is through through my time at Side Effects, honestly, and just understanding a little bit more about game development. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas. Like, I think the PCG route is a good way to be able to go to get data back and forth. When it comes to the C++ stuff, I certainly am not an expert on that. And that there's very few people that probably are. That's pretty much like the developers at Side Effects and probably some other folks out there that have built plugins and things like that, maybe, or at studios. But yeah, that's hopefully an answer, at least a little bit of an answer for you. I'd have to look into that a little bit more, I think, maybe. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting question. Yeah, I'll be curious to hear your response to that and see what's up. I just see Johannes say there, thanks for the answers, hoping for something like quick rig or whatever it's called in Maya. Yeah, I don't know what those are even called. Like I said, I've never been a character animator, but yeah, character rigging isn't as hard as I thought it. Like there's difficulty to it, but I think Houdini does a pretty good job of dealing with a lot of it. Yeah. Okay. So Michael, yeah, take a look at that stuff. Take a look at tops and PDG and things like that, because it depends on what exactly you're doing. Like if you're recreating a big, huge world and you need to just like PDG can actually help you just update just a small little piece of it, or also automate the generation of a bunch of things. And PCG, I'm pretty sure you probably also want to look at the Side Effects Labs stuff as well. I feel like did something with I feel like they put out a PCG thing recently. I can't remember what it was called. I'd have to look at like maybe if you looked at it on GitHub, you might be able to find on there what it is or whatever, but yeah, that's that. I feel like there's something in there with they did something with PCG. I'd have to look into it, but yeah. Anyways, yeah. Again, hopefully that helped. What's my favorite color? I tend to like greens and stuff like that. It's funny, actually. The room I'm sitting in right now is actually painted really dark green. That was actually my wife's choice, but I do really like green. So there you go. There's my favorite color, I guess. I don't know. I'm not. Yeah. So, Shred Major asked a question. Do you have a workflow for visualizing VFX shots? How do they usually read in a script? Are you talking about like, visualizing them, meaning like for previews and things like that? Or are you talking about, like, are you talking about like a way to show them in the viewport better? Or and I'm not sure what you mean by read in a script. Like take like an actual like script that like somebody's written for a movie and load that into Houdini somehow. Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify there so I don't answer in some weird way that you're like, what the heck's he talking about? I'll give you a second to kind of formulate your thoughts there. Oh, I see what you're saying. And since you haven't started working on them yet, you're trying to figure out how to build it in Houdini. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. My general workflow, I'm trying to think back to my few years ago working in studios and things like that. What I would generally do is break the problem down into there's kind of two different steps that I would go through, right? Like there's the R&D phase of things, right? And in that I would always try to find the simplest proof of concept I could, right? Like for example, I want to melt something, right? Like don't try to melt like a skyscraper from like Kit Bash or something like that. Like and with like if you're gonna like like chop a building in half, like don't start with a Kit Bash building and start trying to mess with it, right? And so like that is one thing I would say is like a lot of times I see people come with questions where they're like, I want to break this building into a billion pieces, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, but like let's start with like a cube first and then like see how these things work and like see exactly what it is you're looking for and then go from there. So that's one thing I would say in like the R&D phase of things is that a lot of people try to that will, a lot of people will try to go like crazy right off the bat and like get into the deepest possible stuff that they could. And it's like, whoa, like let's take a step back and look at something that's a little like, yeah, you might have a limited time, but sometimes you spend so much effort trying to debug like a mesh that's not good versus a process, right? So there's that. Breaking down a script, I feel like that is a little different. Like whenever I've done something like that, I mean, that's for me, I just kind of try to like when I've read through scripts in the past, most of my work was commercial, right? But so like usually it was like storyboards that I would get or like things. So it wasn't usually a script, but when I was given scripts for things, I'd usually try to in my mind visualize what the writer was kind of picturing, and then think about, well, how would I go about doing that, right? And how would I go about executing something like that? Oh, would that be an explosion? Would that be some sort of like a magic effect? Would that be fluid or whatever? And then kind of go from there. So that's kind of how I would look at that. I would kind of try to like visualize the process and then think about what are the things that I'm going to have to do here. And then also, is this simulation or not simulation, right? Like a lot of times we Houdini users get so stuck on the fact that like everything should be a simulation. And there's a really great presentation from from who was it? Shoot, I think it was from the film Last of Us, and it was at FMX, and I want to say it was FMX this past year. I'm pretty sure it was a great presentation, and like they did so many things in that, like weird cuts and blood from these things and all this different stuff, and it was all just like procedural animation. It wasn't simulation. And I think a lot of times as Houdini artists, we get caught up in the fascination of simulation and we forget that there's other ways of doing things. So like when you're breaking a script down, don't just go, well, this obviously has to be, it's, I don't know, like a blood splatter or something like that. And like, oh, well, obviously I'm going to simulate some blood flying out of something. Then, but like, think about it. Is it like a character that's like even a few feet away from camera does a simple like composite work just as well as a simulation would? Like those are the things that have to be thought of, right? Especially if you're being a responsible person, like reading through scripts and stuff like that. So there's that piece of it. Then when it comes to actually like starting to block things out and starting to animate things, usually what I would do is get, oh, cool. You found it. Great. Yeah. That's a great presentation. Take a look at that. It's a good one. It's a really good, I think he goes through, quite a few different like shots, and it was really fun. I think after that, on the way home from that trip, I think I was actually messing around with making some of those little things. I think some of like the fungus stuff that he talks about in there it's just a really fun thing. Like procedural, like modeling, I guess, in a way, or just building things procedurally is really fun, I think. So sometimes doing non-simulation is cool too. But when I'm like blocking stuff out in Houdini, or honestly any program, I always would just start with like super simple animations of things. Like if you can just do a wireframe that's like for example, there was one that I can think of really clearly, project that we were doing like a simulation. Like we were doing all these different effects for this golf ball company, and they had liquid metal. They had metal inside their golf balls, which sounds crazy, but it's the way they made them. And so we had all these different things that we were doing, and what, instead of going through oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, let me see if I can find it here. I'm sure I can find it. Talks maybe, and let's see. Yes, I think this is, yep, here it is. All right, so let me see if I can get to this. Yeah. Oh, it's gross. It's gross. It's a gross one. Here, I will just copy the Vimeo link here. you might be able to get to that. Maybe, hopefully, if it doesn't work, you can find that this is all just if anybody's ever wondering too. The chat gets put onto Discord as well, so you we both did the same thing. Yeah, you can find the chat on Discord. So there's a Hangout live chat under the live channels, and the whole chat's in there. So you can always go back and reference stuff if you want to, or you can just follow along on there if you want to, because that's going to be the quickest. It's going to be the quickest way to be able to chat and things like that. So, anyways, so yeah, so when I was doing some examples of these golf balls and things like that, we would use things just like like we had this kind of bubble that came up and then turned into the golf ball from liquid. I think I showed that clip on the stream at some point in the past. And with that, it was just literally a sphere coming up, and then we just kind of Booleaned it into the golf ball. Like you just kind of do some really simple things with it. And I think as long as you can get the layout and like the kind of timing and pacing set up in those, that gives you a really solid starting point. And then, then you start taking those R&D things and then this blocking that you have and kind of put those together, right? So that's my thought process on how to do some of that stuff. I know that's maybe a little general and maybe obvious, but hopefully that helps a little bit. I think there's probably a lot of different ways that people might go about doing some of that stuff, but yeah, hopefully that helps. I forget who even asked that. Shred Major. Yeah, Mirko, that it is pretty gross. The cutting part is super, super gross, but the cutting part is there's no simulation there. I just love it. It's so cool. Like it's just so fun and satisfying to see something done so well that isn't simulation. I don't know. There's a part of me that just really loves that. Cool. Yeah. So, cool. I saw, Kumo had posted a couple things in there about them doing some stuff to Unreal, using points with metadata as JSON. Yep. That's kind of like that's kind of the opposite of what was done with, that's kind of the opposite of like the, that Matrix City project that was done. That's kind of the opposite, where it was like points and then, that's so crazy. Shred Major. That's awesome, man. Yes, I definitely remember that. Cool. Well, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. Yeah, that was an epic setup. Shred was brought we had everybody to bring their computers to this workshop I did at the University of Utah. And he actually brought in his whole desktop, but it was in like a case, and it was slick. It was a good setup. I liked it. I think you were saying the only thing you got to figure out is how to have a better monitor, because I thought you had just like a monitor in your hand, and I was like, just got your monitor? Like you brought that with you for your laptop or something? And then I was like, oh, you actually have a whole desktop. It was crazy, but that was really cool. That was a fun workshop as well. We did some USD and Unreal stuff, so that was cool. Nice. Well, glad to have you on in the chat. That's great. Cool. So if anybody has any other questions or anything like that, please feel free to drop them in the chat. This is just kind of an open Q&A session. If we have any more stuff, we'll jump back into Houdini. We're kind of getting a little close on the end of time for me today. Anyways, I actually have to kind of jet out a little early and go grab some house stuff. I gotta go pick up something for the house. It's not too far. It's pretty close, but in Buffalo, everything's fairly close, so it's kind of nice. But anyways, yeah, so if you have any questions or thoughts or anything like that you're curious about, happy to chat about them. And yeah, good. I enjoyed it too. It was really good. Yes. Cool. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I saw you say that earlier, Kat. Sorry about that. Trying to learn Python and Houdini. Do you have any resources that I suggest? Yes. I think there is a really good. What is the name of it? What is it? What is it? Oh, yes, yes, yes. So, uh, Waffle Boy Tom is a really big nerd with Python, and there's a whole Wikipedia out there, um, or like a wiki that is, I think, really helpful way of doing this. I don't use a lot of Houdini Python in my Houdini, um, but this could be some really cool stuff to like look into. Um, looks like it's got a lot of stuff in it, and yeah, there's a lot of really interesting things in this wiki, and um, I know that Tom has contributed a bunch to this, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, yeah, 10 pages. Look at that. Um, but yeah, so yeah, of course, Kat. What I would also like, just one thing that's I think really neat that like I think there's just so many different ways that you can use um Python in Houdini. Like you can make custom viewer state stuff for it, and you can do all sorts of different things for tools, and there's just oh cool, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Um yeah, Matt's stuff is fantastic for the Vex, and I'm glad to have been able to take it and turn it into some video stuff. I think Matt Estella has some stuff on uh, the CG Wiki. I think there's some stuff there as well. Let's see here. I think there's some Python in there. I think it's probably a little more limited than um than what you'll get into in that HooPy. But I think it's actually really nice because um it looks like it gives you a nice, like there's like a 12 days of Python on here, which looks really nice. It talks to you about like setting up like your own personal like workflow basically, which is cool. So yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear you've learned some stuff, and yeah, hopefully this will get you in that, get you going in there. And yeah, if you ever have questions about Python, I bet you Tom will pop up and give some advice, because he's really good with Python. And now he's a developer for Side Effects, so I mean, he's just living his best life. But anyways, cool. Yeah, you're welcome. No problem at all. No problem at all. Cool. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that we will. Oh, yeah, I could actually show. Gosh, sorry. I took a drink. Sorry about that. Or maybe I just hit that. Well, I don't know. I hit my mute button. Anyways, there we go. Sorry about that. Anyways, so take a look at this. There's multiple days here of Python that you can take a look at. Lots of good stuff. Yeah. Anyways, whole primer on getting started and ways of kind of going through all this stuff. So yeah, lots of good information there to take a look at in the HooPy wiki. Yeah, hopefully that works for you. You know what? I must have hit that when I faded it on. That must have been what I did. Anyways, cool. Well, I don't know if we have any other questions coming up, which is fine, which is good. Oh, sure. There's another question. Yeah. So OpenUSD, what's the latest with that in Houdini? Like how? Yeah, you're welcome, Kat. Good deal. So with OpenUSD, what's the deal with the workflow there? So with OpenUSD, USD in general, I think that Houdini has one of the better implementations of that standard, right? With the Solaris tools and things like that. Solaris can be painful for Houdini artists. I think we run into that a lot. I think the main part is that USD is a scene description language. And because of that, you have to think about things a little differently than we're able to do in Houdini, where we just throw down a vex wrangle and manipulate a million points and everything just is great and you have an attribute and blah, blah, blah. Within USD, there's a lot more considerations. And really it's more of the end, like it can be a middle of the pipeline process, but it's not always a thing where you're not doing simulations in the Solaris workflow and things like that. So anyways, there's a lot of things, and I've made a whole series of videos on those and things like that. But I think right now, the way that Side Effects is looking at all of the UST stuff is continuing to work with any updates, to the USD workflow in general. I don't see anything coming along that like Side Effects is like, no, we're not going to support that. Like basically the support will continue as is and be completely supported. We've given, especially in like the Material X space, which is kind of closely related to USD. We've given a few bits of code into that to kind of make Material X even better, and then make some of the stuff that we've done already sort of redundant so that we can then just use the official Material X implementation. So more third-party renderers and things like that will be able to support them and continue to work. I don't really have any like thoughts on that per se. I think in the future, Side Effects will probably want to continue to make the experience better for users. Like I said, I think it's already one of the better, implementations of USD in software packages. I think it's pretty much a complete implementation of it. There's not really anything that doesn't work there. But I think usability, user, UX kind of stuff, user experience stuff. I think those things could become better and easier to use, and more stuff to be able to get people started down that path. But yeah, I mean, obviously NVIDIA has their Omniverse platform software. And that would really, well, I think that really is the idea with Material X, Crack. You were just asking that. Yeah, that's the idea with Material X, is that it really is supposed to make it all very seamless, as long as people all follow the rules, basically, right? Like there's no reason the only reason that Maya to Houdini would have a problem bringing a Material X shader over is if Maya's not doing something that respects Material X. I mean, Houdini completely complies with all Material X, standards, imports them and exports them and everything. So like there might be something in their export that might not work, but it should be pretty seamless. Material X is Material X. Now there are some things that we've built into Karma using Material X that would not go back, only because they are Material X nodes and node graphs, but they are not in the Material X, kind of like baseline. So with that in mind, with like the Material X stuff in mind, it's really about everybody kind of keeping things as minimal as possible, like anything that they're doing on top of it as minimal as possible. The basis of Material X should always be able to be passed back and forth. Like the standard surface is standard surface. It's pretty straightforward. There's also all this stuff called OpenPBR that's coming down the pipeline for Material X. And that is an open physically based like rendering, like material workflow basically. And again, Houdini is going to continue to follow these, basically anything that's done in those spaces, right? In the in any of these open kind of things, right? Like some of the people on our staff, on Side Effects staff, are part of like OpenVDB, and there's people that work with Material X and OpenUSD and stuff like that, and like so we're really trying to be on top of that, and we're really trying to kind of help push that forward. And like things like ramps weren't really a part of Material X. One thing to remember about Material X is it's been around for a little while, but for a long time, the only point of it was to be able to export from one software and import into another, right? It was just a way to bridge. It was not like something you worked with. So there weren't things like ramps and things like that that needed to be touched by artists, because it was just an interchange format. And now, because it is supported by a lot of renderers, now it's starting to be a thing where it's like, well, why don't we work here? And then all can kind of branch out from there, I guess, like if you look at it that way. Here's what I would say is, so Shred is asking some questions there about USD and Material X. And yeah, 19.5 in 19.5 certainly is not as it was fairly mature at that point. Like things are in a fine spot, but like 20 and 20.5 have really added a lot of usability features and things like that for those workflows, which make it a lot nicer to work with. One thing I think super high on my list is the quick surface materials that exist in Houdini. Like it is an Uber shader, full standard surface model that you literally drop one node down. You have a full standard surface shader that can take all sorts of image textures and displacements and normal maps and all that kind of stuff, and just it's built for you. Like you don't have to go in and add image nodes to load images and things. Like it's there. So like any image based texture, you can just plug right into it, and that is really nice. So yeah, so I mean, I'm super biased, obviously. Like it's really hard for me to say, because I'm as far as the industry goes, I'm a part of the group that Side Effects is part of the OpenUSD world, and we were a member of that. And so we really I think our company, along with a lot of those companies there, really do think that USD is the right way to move forward with the industry. So I mean, obviously again, there's a confirmation bias, but I do hear a lot of I've been in a lot of conversations where there are studios that are just, yep, we're moving over to Solaris. We're just going to be doing all of our lighting in Solaris. We're doing all of our rendering in Solaris. Like, I'm pretty sure that, and I want to say in one of the FMX presentations by Rise, they mentioned that they were using, I want to say that they were using Karma, but I'm pretty sure that they're using for Fallout or whatever. But I'm pretty sure that all of their stuff is all going through USD, for a Fallout for a TV show for the Fallout TV show was all going through USD and Solaris, like top to bottom. And that's like a huge, like that is a huge company that's just like all in on it, you know, like Disney, Pixar, ILM, you know, like all of these huge companies are just so into these things. I guess maybe I can't say ILM for sure. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but like the big companies are really bought into this stuff, and they're all pushing more and more into that. Now they do have to rebuild their pipelines to be able to work with USD and blah blah blah. But yeah, it really is pretty crazy. And like I sat in like I want to say most of the like production chats that I sat in on at SIGGRAPH this year were like everybody had said something about USD at some point. So, you know, yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. The Fallout series was really cool. Yeah. I've only been able to see like the stuff that they've shown. I don't have Amazon Prime or whatever, but yeah, I didn't watch the actual thing, but all the stuff I've seen is fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, Cops and Quick Service is a lot to experiment with now. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Cops is just super fun. And I think, you know, in the upcoming versions, you will see more features, more stability, things like that. Yeah, Remedy with USD. Yeah, gaming is starting to look at USD as well. There's an entire so the ASWF, which is the Academy Software Foundation. Is that right? I always say that, but am I saying that right? I can't remember. Oh, wow. What just happened there? My camera just freaked out. Sorry. There we go. The heck was that? Jeez. Okay. Interesting. Let me see here. AS. Yes, Academy Software Foundation. Anyways, the SWF has working groups for all of the like for all different things, like for working with you know games and assets and cameras and all sorts of things like that. So they have a whole gaming section that just is dedicated to how do we make USD work better in games. So yeah, there's lots of that stuff out there, but yeah, I think USD is definitely going to be a big thing moving forward. So, and it already is, like, it's already super popular across so many different things. I mean, obviously Pixar uses it, they invented it, but you know, Disney now does too. And you know, there's lots of really cool stuff on the horizon, like Pixar is already running HDAs in USD, which basically means that you can just open up a USD file. It'll basically run like Houdini engine, and you can run an HDA in whatever software is opening up. Like it's basically running in the background of, like, say you were in like some other lighting program or Maya or something, whatever. Like it's running that in the background for you and just in the USD file. So the HDA is right in there, and you can just change parameters and it adjusts the HD. I know it's super crazy, because I think even some of our developers were like, whoa, that's cool. What are you doing there? That's wild. So, I mean, that's obviously like a really extreme case, but there's some cool stuff you can do with USD. So awesome. It always comes back to USD somehow. It always does. For me, at least. I've done a lot of USD stuff. Cool. Well, oh yeah, Inside Out 2. Right. Yeah, that would have a ton of USD stuff. Very cool. Oh, were they doing that with Houdini Engine? Where did you see that? Did you see that where did you see behind the scenes? Is it Disney Plus or something, or where did you find that? Just out of curiosity, I always love a good behind the scenes. The stuff that I had seen them talk about that with was from Elemental. they were talking about the smokestacks on the top of all of the fire buildings and that were HDAs. Oh, private talk. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Very cool. Is that like a school thing? Like what? That's wow. That is interesting. Let me know if you have any invites to private talks like that. That sounds fun. Cool. Nice. Very cool. But yeah, the smokestacks on the top of the buildings had an HDA that the parameters on that related to how the like a generalized smoke sim would simulate those things coming out. So as like layout artists adjust that, they could then that would get handed back to the simulation artists, and then they would have those parameters from that HDA to just put into their simulations as a starting point, basically, and save time between like, oh, how high did they want these, and like, that kind of thing. So anyways, cool. Well, we're kind of getting up to the 2-hour mark here, and like I said, I need to head out soon, so I think we're going to kind of call things there and start wrapping things up here for the night. Thanks everybody for all the questions. That was super fun. I always like this kind of more back and forth conversation thing. I think sometimes when we're showing a topic, sometimes it can feel a little weird to like just jump in the chat, so people are maybe a little bit more hesitant, but I always like the more conversational stuff. So this is always welcome on the stream to have more conversations like this. But yeah, so that's where we'll end up our conversation for the day. Yeah, thanks to everybody. Thanks for the questions and the comments and for all the back and forth. Super, super great. And yeah, we'll see what we get up to next week. And yeah, always happy to have more folks on the Discord. So feel free to jump on Houdini Hangout. There's an invite link there, and you can jump into the Discord. And yeah, you can add suggestions and things like that for what we might do next time. And yeah, we'll see what we get into. So thanks everybody. And I'll see you all next time. Have a great night, great rest of your week, and see you next week. Bye.